All right, thank you everybody for joining me today. So our movement tutorial, we're going to look at these two things here. Gymnastic rings. Very, very intimidating. For myself, when I first saw anybody do anything on them, I was like, that's what gymnasts do. I don't do that. Maybe I could do like a pull-up, but that's it. And I didn't know where to start. I had no idea. So today I wanted to show you the starting point of where we can get started with gymnastic rings in a relatively safe manner to start to really build some really, really good strength. Now, a few things before we even get started. One is when it comes to pulling, gymnastic rings are not going to make a pull-up that much more challenging. Some would even say they're actually, I actually prefer doing the ring pull-ups because the fact that the ring can turn and move, so it's a little bit better. It will, for your shoulder joint, it's more accessible. Your arm's going to move into the more comfortable position. So when it comes to pulling work, the gymnastic rings don't offer a huge advantage as far as strength building. Now when it comes to pushing work, this is absolutely the opposite. Any pushing work done on gymnastic rings is going to be considerably more challenging than on the floor, even on parallettes or anything like that. And obviously it's because of the design. So you have a ring here, but it's attached to a strap, which is attached up high. So it's going to be very unstable. And it is this fact about the rings, the instability that they offer, in addition to the fact that they can smoothly turn and rotate as we're moving through a variety of movements, which is what makes the gymnastic rings one of the best tools for training the upper body for strength and complexity. So they're amazing, but we have to know how to use them and be comfortable using them. So that's, again, what we're going to try to go over today. $30-$40, you can get a really nice pair of gymnastic rings. I do recommend wooden gymnastic rings. I'm not a fan of the metal or the plastic ones. They'll tear up your hands a little bit more, but really, really nice. And again, you can get pretty good quality for $30 or $40. I am not sure the brand. I don't know if these are actually from Titan. The strap is. I've interchanged so many of these rings at this point. I'm not sure. But yes, so get yourself a pair of gymnastic rings and obviously something in your house to hang them on that is safe. Obviously, that's important stuff. All right, let's see where we can get started. We're not going to, again, look at any pull work today. We're just going to look at some push work. So I would first have the gymnastic rings hung hopefully at the ideally same height. And I'm just going to try a plank. So we'll start off with a regular plank. So I will hold on to the gymnastic rings. Now, the farther out I go, the easier it is going to be because of the angle of my body. So this plank is perhaps relatively hard, but as soon as I start to go here, it becomes much more challenging. All right? So, excuse me. We start just in our initial hold for a plank. So I want to tuck my tailbone nice and hard. I definitely am up on the balls of my feet here, / tippy toes. And notice the rings are very close to the side of my body. I'm not trying to plank out here. I want these gymnastic rings very, very close. The closer the gymnastic rings are to your body, the easier they will be to control. The further away the gymnastic rings move away from your body, the more challenging that they're going to be to control. So I would try to hold this position, high plank, pressing into the gymnastic rings, maybe even getting some rounding out of my upper back. Now, what we eventually want to try to build the strength for, if you notice both of my palms are turned in, we want to see if over time we can begin to have the pit of the elbow pointing forward. Now, this will offer a more challenging position, but will also strengthen the back and scapular muscles for the type of strength that we need when trying to play around on gymnastic rings. So that would be our eventual goal, to be able to hold a high plank for time with the pit of the elbow pointed forward, and if maybe have this nice protracting of the scap pressing away and just trying to hold for time. When you got to come out, just step a foot out, maybe building up 30, maybe even 60 seconds again with perhaps that turnout over time. So just the regular high plank. I'm sure we've all maybe done high planks many times before on the floor. Again, considerably more challenging on gymnastic rings. So I would, again, just start there. Now, are there ways to progress even the plank? For sure. We can start to kind of have the hands move away from us a little bit. We could even start to have like little circles with the hands. But more advanced stuff. Right now, we just want to get comfortable on rings. So I would recommend a few months just building up that basic level of strength with the 6 things that we're going to kind of demonstrate and show you today. So that is one, just the high plank. Again, starting here, eventually being able to hold and turn out, keeping a nice strong core, tucked tailbone, protracting the scap, pressing away on the rings here. All right, next one is now holding low plank, bent arm position. So again, the further out, the easier it's going to be if I'm here holding it versus if the rings are here. So I'm going to try to start in this low plank position and notice that the rings are really, really close into my side body. Again, the farther the rings get out, the more wobbly that they'll get. So I'm going to have the rings in nice and close, and I'll tuck my toes here, bring the knees off the ground, and I'm actively pressing into these gymnastic rings. I don't want to just try to hang out and be passive here and just kind of like chill. I want to really, really press the rings down and keep them again in really, really nice and close so my elbows are squeezed into side body. We're just trying to build the strength in this position, which can be a very vulnerable position. Just kind of because of what the shoulder head is doing, the femur head. So I'm just trying to press, just get strong in this position, and I don't want to be scrunched up. I want my shoulders down and away from my ears. Again, pressing into these gymnastic rings with a tucked tailbone. So, very, very similar, however, bent arms. The first variation of our plank was straight arms. Second variation, bent arms. I would say this is a good starting point. We want to get very proficient and strong at both the top hold position in the plank and also the low plank hold. Very important stuff. Now, we can connect those two things. I did the top plank hold, and then to start the next one, I dropped down onto my knees, I set it up, then I lifted my knees. As you start to build strength here, we want to work towards the push-up. And if we notice, the top hold and the bottom hold, those are the two different end ranges of motion with the push-up. So indeed, a great starting point would be to see if you can hold your high plank and then slowly lower down and then hold the low plank on the rings. If you imagine what we just did there, we did basically a negative push-up. If you're from the realm of yoga, in essence, a chaturanga. So that will start building the strength to where you can do push-ups for repetitions. And again, these push-ups will be considerably more challenging than a push-up on the floor. This is what I mean. We're holding high plank here at the top, perhaps with the palms turned out. Perhaps not yet. When the time comes, you're ready to perform that push-up, we're going to see if we can begin to bend the elbows. They're coming in close to the side of the body. Very, very controlled. Very, very controlled. And now I'm stopping. Everything is in. I'm actively pushing. Tuck my tailbone. And I'm holding this low plank. So I just performed a negative under control from high plank down to low plank. When the day comes, we get strong enough in the negative that we have the strength to push ourselves out of, then we can get to the point where we're doing ring push-ups. So, at the top, I'm turned out. I turn in to bend. I'll pause here for a moment. I'll see if I can press up, rings stay close at the top. I would turn out for a second hold, and then I would try to drop it back down. Everything is in close. Notice these straps are rubbing up against my body, pressing up, the turnout at the top. So, that's how we can slowly over time progress into push-ups on the rings. We start with the high plank, the low plank. We maybe start connecting those through the negative. Over time, weeks, months, who knows, years, we can come down, press back up, performing ring push-ups with the turnout at the top. That's where I would start. All right, a good starting point. Getting strong there, spending time. You'd be amazed at how challenging these rings are. So, after you have built that level of of strength. We're then going to take it to the next level. All right. And for the sake of time, we're going to hope that these are relatively close together. If we're a little off, it's going to be okay. I'm not going to do too much on the rings. At least not here in this video. All right, so they're in a pretty good distance now. All right, so please spend time with those first 3 progressions. Again, working the push-up. Exact same concept here. We are going to work the push again, but we're going to work it in a more challenging manner. So the first thing we're going to try is a straight arm top of the ring hold, or almost like a top of the dip hold. And I have the rings at a pretty good height that initially keep the toe, I can't stress this enough, keep the toes on the ground. Keep the toes on the ground. So I want the ring so that I can straighten out my arms completely. Notice in the beginning, I'm not turned out, although I will try to work towards turning out. I'm going to see if I can have the rings by my side, and I'm going to keep my toes on the ground, and I'm just going to try and press and just get my toes light over time, eventually building the strength to where I'm turned out and I'm pushing, and I'm just trying to get, the toes light over time. So again, just the tippy toes are touching, and then carefully coming down. Indeed, these rings actually could be a little bit lower. They're equal now. I don't want to change them off. So my legs, because of the height of these, are a little high right now, but typically they might be, with straight arms, a little bit bent at the knees, and then the toes will be a little bit easier to control kind of on the floor. But start with the toes on the floor, trying with 2 straight arms. Now, eventually, we want to see if the toes can lift up off of the ground. Now, with the ring height, it'll be a little bit more accessible for me. So eventually, I can start again without the palms turned out. We want to build that strength. It's important. But initially, maybe we start here. I'm going to push the rings, straighten out the arms, and now the feet hover. And again, rings are really, really close by side body. All right? So that's how we would then be our next progression. Now, we can absolutely make that more challenging as well. And I'm going to show you one little thing to try to avoid. So when we first start doing this, it's very challenging. So we're going to get very, very internally rotated here. This is typically what happens. So a lot of times, and I know at first too, I was here just trying to maintain. So I was really, really turned in. But over time, we're trying to be a lot more vertical. Whoop. Moving around a little bit. A lot more vertical rather than being so turned in on the rings. So we eventually want to try to get to here where the chest is nice and straight. And again, it's going to be a bit wobbly. The turnout is what over time we're trying to build towards, where we can turn out, pressing the shoulders down and away from the ears. We're trying to get away from it. So scapular depression in the back as we press down and try to almost like lift up out of it. All right? So this one feels a little wonky today. All right. So that's the straight arm hold. Now, in the same exact approach with the plank, we now want to try to find the low dip hold. So again, very similar to the low plank hold, but again, a bit more challenging. So I can bend the knees, keeping these rings in super, super close. Notice they're not up here. I want to try to pull down and away, creating space between ears and shoulders. I'm going to start on my tippy toes. So tippy toes, rings are in, and I'm actively pressing into these rings. Don't be passive and just hang out here. Press the rings down into the floor. All right, keep them close by. Get light on your toes. Eventually, the feet perhaps lift, and again, we're holding this low, deep dip position with the feet hovering at some point in time. So I just want you to see the connections of how it's really the same approach. It's just that we're a bit more vertical here. The rings are higher, so it makes everything more challenging. So it's the difference between kind of moving it from the plank position into the push-up versus from here more into the dip position, which is, again, considerably more challenging, particularly on rings. In the same way that we were able to connect the high plank to the low plank and then slowly build that strength over time so that we can perform push-ups on the rings, to perform a dip on rings would be done the same way. So I would start with the high hold with the straight arms at the top, and then I would see if I could slowly work on lowering down, holding the low dip position. Same exact approach as our first 3 steps for the push-up. It's just using the dip now as our alternative. So it would look like this. Eventually, again, I spent time on the toes, so we have that strength first. We're going to see if we can lift up, feet hovering. Again, maybe we're turned out at the top. From here, I'll turn in. I'm going to bend and perform the negative, and I'll hold this position, or maybe toes touch in this position. But I worked the negative. I'm building strength here, and then when you're ready, feet touch down. Same way, we build the strength in the negative, going from the top to the low hold. We can eventually then press ourselves up out of it to, again, perform a dip on rings. Again, very challenging stuff, trying to promote the turnout at the top. So if we can learn the similarities, we can kind of connect and understand without really needing to know like exactly how it goes. We just look at how we did the easier version. It's the same approach. It's just more vertical, so it's a bit more challenging. Now, again, we showed you a bunch of things as far as what's the protocol. How long should I try to hold it for? When am I ready to advance? Well, I would say with the planks, maybe 30 to 60 seconds holds, and then the low dip position, perhaps the low plank position, maybe you're also able to hold those for about 30 to 60 seconds. Now, for the more challenging variation that we just showed, I would say perhaps you're holding for maybe 20 to 25 seconds, both the top hold and that low dip hold, maybe around 20 to 25 seconds. And then as far as push-ups, see how many you can get. Just a few dips, very, very challenging, again, particularly on rings. So give it a shot. Give it a shot. So that's what I will say today, at least as far as the rings go. There are many, many ways to advance what you're doing on rings. If we see some of what the gymnasts are doing, it's quite impressive and remarkable. But it's no wonder gymnasts are so jacked. The idea, again, they wobble, they move. So they're going to constantly be moving in and out of your strong position and into your weak positions. And it forces you to get strong in all those positions because you're working the entire time on stabilizing yourself so that you don't fall and the rings don't go flying. So I'll leave you with this. Again, try to keep the rings in as close to your body when starting to work with the rings, and really, really take your time. I think you'll be surprised at how your strength level can increase greatly by using the rings for not even that long of a period of time. But take your time because they are very unstable. And if you want to advance, you have to create this foundation first before you try to advance into more challenging movements on the rings, such as the muscle up or anything like that. So this today was about a starting point and to hopefully take away some of the intimidation behind gymnastic rings, because I totally understand, they're foreign. It's like what the gymnasts use that, a regular person in a gym doesn't use. I do bring these to the gym when I go LA Fitness, and I'm the only person I've ever seen with gymnastic rings in there. But again, one of the best tools that exists as far as one tool to work the upper body. Ido, our teacher, he will put gymnastic rings as far as the upper body for strength and complexity, puts gymnastic rings at pretty much the top of the food chain as far as for one particular movement pattern to work the upper body. So, and one tool. All right. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Hope it took a little bit of your questions away of like gymnastic rings. Okay, I get them. What do I do with them? They're just going to build up dust. Well, no, start here. And again, spend months here. You, again, be shocked, I think, at how strong you can get on gymnastic rings, especially if you've never touched them before. But please take your time. Questions, comments, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, come on into class. We can talk more and more about rings. All right? Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you next time. Anybody else interested, please spread the word about this Patreon account. And otherwise, I thank you and appreciate it. Later, guys.